how much we need to hear these words from the prophet Isaiah when we are weighed down, when we are persecuted, when we're on the point of giving up, when things aren't going our way. Isaiah says, "Be strong, fear not, here is your God." He comes with vindication, with divine recompense. He comes to save you. We not only need to hear these words, but we need to know that the Lord is speaking them to us today. He wants us to hear them and to be comforted by them. Because the word of God is not a dead word. It's not a word spoken only to people long ago and written down and now handed on to us. It's a living word that comes to us now to open our ears to hear a message of hope. And that means that we have to believe that Jesus is still doing what he did for that deaf man in the Decapolis. That he's still opening ears, still opening eyes, still loosening our tongues so that we can speak and proclaim his praise. We have to believe that Jesus is still speaking a word that works, a word that does something, a word that enacts what it proclaims. In fact, I would say that this weekend is proof that the Lord is still speaking. Tomorrow, there are 3 young women who will be brought into full communion with the Catholic Church here at St. Benedict. It's not because of our fancy programs, It's not because we convinced them to join the church and made the right arguments to cause them to take that step. It's because Jesus Christ spoke to their hearts. Jesus spoke to their hearts. He came to them personally and touched their ears so that they could hear his voice in a new way. He came to them personally and touched their eyes so that they could see more than they could see before. It was Jesus who did it. Maybe he used some of us as instruments to make his presence known, but it's the Lord who works. It's the Lord who acts. And I think this is so important for us because what we are inviting people to is an encounter with Jesus Christ, because he is the one who has come to save us. We can't do this by our own creativity. He does the work through us. He needs us as witnesses, as people who help others to open their eyes and ears and hearts to the one who is constantly speaking to them. God never stops speaking. God never stops calling us by name. God never stops calling mercy upon us and inviting us to new hope and new joy. But he needs us to be his voice in the world. Last week I was at a meeting with people from all over the world, from 76 countries, speaking about the life of the church and what's happening in the world. And there was one woman in particular from Moscow who spoke about her struggle to live there in Russia. She doesn't want to be in a country that's at war. She doesn't agree with what's happening there. And I was really struck by what she said. This is what she said: "I remain in Russia because I have to stay. I stay for the children that I care for." She said there's a temptation to close ourselves off, to ignore what's happening, because sometimes we lack the strength to stand in the face of what's happening. It was a profound witness to me. I was so moved by her words, because while we're not at war, we can lack the strength to stand in the face of what's happening. Maybe it's a hardship at work. Maybe it's struggle in our marriage. Maybe it's something else, that financial issues that we're having, whatever. Sometimes we lack the ability to stand in front of those things and proclaim with confidence that Jesus Christ is Lord. It's like suddenly we don't believe it. And in fact, we can do the same thing with God, that with God who isn't our enemy. We can close ourselves off from God because we prefer our own comfort, or we think that he might ask us to change ourselves and we don't want to change. And so rather than being open being available to God. We hunker down behind our walls and we close ourselves off in solitude. It's a sign, if we're closing ourselves off from God, it's a sign that somewhere in us we are at war with God, that we are fighting him and resisting. It's like a secret war, a war that we haven't explicitly declared against God, but we choose to defend ourselves against him by distractions or by loading up our calendars with things that are just empty and useless. And then when God invites us to pray, or when God puts someone in front of us who's in need, we pick up our weapons of self-interest and shoot down all the chances that God is giving us to actually move closer to him. It's amazing what happens when we go to war with God, because we cut ourselves off from his life, from the joy that he wants to give us. Again, those words from the prophet Isaiah, here is your God. He comes with vindication. He comes to save you. He wants to help you. He wants to help us to live. Immediately after this, in that reading from Isaiah, it talks about all these things that come to life. The lame leap, water comes out of the desert. All this stuff springs to life. There's all this excitement and enthusiasm and joy. I mean, don't we want that in our lives? Don't we want life? Don't we want joy? Don't we want hope? Or do we want to live cut off, isolated and alone and depressed, because we feel like there's no one out there who cares? God comes not to destroy us, but to save us. And so our position in front of God and in front of life can't be one of defensiveness, of drawing battle lines. Our position in front of all this has to be openness, ephatha, be open. Openness to what the Lord wants to do in our lives and in our parish. Look, there are great things happening here. It's really beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see the number of people coming to Mass and going to confession on a regular basis is going up, and it's beautiful to see that. And not because there's some quota, that we have to reach, or some benchmark to be a successful parish. This many people have to come to Mass. Forget it. It's beautiful because when we put ourselves in front of God with that kind of openness, good things happen. Because we're allowing the Lord in to work in us and to be a witness and a presence to the rest of the world. We don't want to stop God from invading this place, even if he makes us uncomfortable and challenges us in ways that we don't like. It's better with him here. We are more alive when God is present. We are more free to be ourselves when we know that he is here to help us grow. Christ came to do this, to help us live without impediments, without a speech impediment, without ears that are clogged, without eyes that are blinded. Christ came to set us free so that we can recognize the glory of him present and then echo that glory by the way that we live, by the way that we speak to our brothers and sisters. And so let's be open, ephatha, let's be open. Let's allow the Lord to come in, to do his work in us, so that we can see his glory more and more. Rather than violence and hatred and war, we can see joy and hope and forgiveness. That in all things, God may be glorified.